My name is Cédric, and this talk is called Technical Designers, the Master Link Between Engineering and Design. And I'm going to do things in a little bit out of order before I start, because I'm going to start by telling the story of why I got to do this presentation. And then I introduce myself properly, because introducing myself and my career is kind of part of the topic. So, is this working? So why this talk? I used to have a blog that was called Technical Game Design that I used to maintain. I would talk about random things. And at one point I decided I'm going to attempt to define what a technical game designer is. It's a talk, it's an article that I wrote 7 years ago. So that's quite wild. And last summer, I got a direct message on Twitter from a technical artist who was interested in becoming a technical designer. And they told me that your blog post is still the top ranking search on Google, which I thought was interesting. So it's the top ranking non-ad search result on Google. So I thought that was really interesting for something that was so old. So I went to check the stats and realized that this article still gets about 300 views a month, which I think is pretty surprising considering that the blog is dead and that it's a small niche product. So either I'm a SEO genius or there's just not a lot of conversation about this topic. So I decided to submit this talk to GDC as an update to the article to make people aware that this is a career path that they can take, that is available to them, and making team leads and producers aware that this is a role that might be dormant in their team, that there might be people who fit that definition and could be really helpful to the team. I should mention that this is in no way meant to be a definitive answer to what is a technical designer. As you'll see from the slides, there's different companies might have different definitions of the role. So it's just my interpretation based on some information I've gathered over the years. Okay, so back to me. So my name is Cédric Hauteville. I currently work at DeepMind. For those of you who don't know, DeepMind is an artificial intelligence research company whose AI are most famous for advancing medicine and science, and also beating professionals at their own game. Within this company, I'm part of a team that builds environments that researchers use in order to train their AI agents. So in other words, we make games that are targeting a non-human audience. But like many people in my team, I come from the games industry, which I joined in 2006, and throughout the course of which I've had many roles, as you'll see in the next slide. A fun fact is that despite technical designer being the most accurate way to describe the jobs that I've been doing, I've never had the title. And that's mostly because it wasn't really a thing back then. Throughout my career, I've gone back and forth between more programmer-focused roles and more design-centric roles. That's not because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to be a designer. But I knew I could do either. So I had the opportunity to actually get on kind of both sides of the fence. You can see here a selection of some of the games I've worked on and the roles I had on each title. So what happened was that thanks to a misunderstanding of what a game designer does, I chose to get a degree in computer science and wanted to be a programmer, because I thought that's how you make games, right? And then I realized that I made a slight mistake, and then I enrolled into a school that would get me a game design degree. So I've got a background in both. I don't regret my choices, and I think it's a very valid path, but I don't think it's the only path to become the kind of people who do the job that I do. What is a technical designer? We are seeing more and more job offers for technical designers. So what I thought I would do is look up a few of them and see what kind of skills and responsibility they are looking for. So on one side, we see that there is a bunch of responsibility that kind of come back over and over again. So we're talking about ownership of features and systems, doing some prototyping, responding to designers' requests, doing some scripting. On the other hand, we also see that the required skills that tend to come back in those job offers or job listings are knowing C++ or some other programming language or just text-based editing in general. So based on the information, I suppose we could summarize that a technical designer is a designer who can code. Thank you very much. No, I'm joking. There's actually a lot more to it than that. So this is my background, so it's definitely an advantage. I would say one of the things I like to say is you need to remember that video games are software after all. So being able to know what's going on the programming side is really useful. But what's interesting is that the most significant contributions I've made as a technical designer didn't actually require my programming skills. And I will give some examples of that later in this talk. My guess is that companies who put job offers where you really feel like you need to be a programmer to be able to apply, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to have a gameplay programmer and a system designer for the price of one person. And I think in a way, it's a very valid, and there's value in having people like that, because in my own opinion, oops, got a bit late there. I've always been of the opinion that a technical designer should have the knowledge and most of the skills to build at least part of the game on their own. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be a proficient programmer, especially with the rise of visual scripting and tools like Unreal, for instance. But there is so much more to this position, as I'm hoping to demonstrate in this presentation. So what is a technical designer, really? I've surveyed a group of technical designers from various companies at various sizes, and I compared their answers to my experience. I think the sample size is a bit too small for me to give you actual statistics. That wouldn't be meaningful. But according to the information that I got from them, there are a few key themes that emerge from what a technical designer is, what they should be. And so the first thing is that they are a member and a champion of the design team. I know it sounds a bit obvious because designer is in the title, but remember, when you look at job offers, it kind of feels like it's very easy to mistake technical designers for gameplay programmers. So it bears emphasizing that they are designers first and foremost. The other thing is that they are a support role. So for some people say it is or it should be separate from traditional game and level design position, in the sense that they serve the design team more than they serve the game. So it's more about enabling the other designers to do their job better than being able to make great content, if that makes sense. And finally, one of the key things of technical designers is that they have skills that overlap with other disciplines. So programming might be one of them, but there are other instances where other types of skills can be really useful as a technical designer. So let's dig a bit deeper into this. The basic idea is that your skill set goes beyond what you'd expect from a traditional game or level designer in ways that relate to either the architecture of the game or the content creation pipeline. These can be general game development skills, or they can be more specific to the engine or the tools that you are using. On the general spectrum, we've got our old friends, programming and scripting. But depending on the type of game you're making, some of our skills might be more valuable. For instance, on Until Dawn, one of the earlier iterations of the game had a lot of interactive objects that were animation driven. For instance, like this generator interaction, which actually used to be a lot more complicated than was in the final game. In that context, if you knew how to do rigid body skinning and place a few keyframes on a timeline, you were able to prototype interactions without the help of an animator, which would have made you a very valuable asset in that team in the early stages of the game. On the other side, it's more about having specific knowledge that is not necessarily valid outside of that game or that engine or that company. Examples include how to set up level streaming, building prefabs or blueprints, or knowing another team or another department's tools. Another example in Until Dawn, it was fairly easy to export animations incorrectly, which would lead to breakages. So having designers understand and know how they could export animations themselves unblocked a lot of people and saved a lot of communication and back and forth. So anything you can do or know about beyond the level creation pipeline is going to be another card in your deck. And with those extra skills, you're able to do the most important thing a technical designer can do. Oh, sorry, got late again. Is be an ambassador to the design team. So in the title of this talk, I refer to them as Master Link in reference to the objects that holds a bike chain together. With engines like Unreal and Unity, it's never been easier for designers to prototype new mechanics. As those get iterated on, they get so close to feature complete that people sometimes forget that they are just prototypes. And production schedules might mean that they become the actual implementation. This scares programmers. As those prototypes were never built with stability in mind, I have seen gameplay code deliberately designed in such a way that using built-in visual scripting tool was next to impossible because programmers were afraid that designers would shoot themselves in the foot, which sometimes is valid, sometimes not. Those fears can be mitigated by assigning those responsibility and letting those tools be used by technical designers whose deep knowledge of the engine and their analytical mind can ensure that engineers' concerns are taken into consideration. Similarly, a technical designer can use her skills and knowledge to interface with our team, ensure smooth communication, and find solutions to keep different teams' goals aligned. It is not uncommon for technical designers to implement content like other designers. As such, they know how designers like to work and can advise other teams on how to best format and organize the assets that the level designers and scripters are going to put together. I've had way too many meetings about what folder structures should be like. The thing is, different folder structures will favor different teams or different departments. So design really needs to have a voice in that conversation in order to ensure that whatever compromise is reached actually works for everybody. And technical designers are really good candidates to be that representative. And I think this is especially critical when the team is building content creation tools internally. From experience, new tools rarely get past minimum viable products in the project they are built for. So if you can consult a representative of the design team who can speak your language, sometimes almost literally, your MVP has a much stronger chance to be useful and not get in the way of designers making the best content that they can. They're also capable of taking in designs, technical issues, and requests for new features, find out the consequences, and advocate for a solution that will satisfy all departments. So up to this point, your technical designers has already been, there are very many ways that they can be helpful, and they haven't even put anything into the game yet. So they can use their soft skill is one way they can help, or they can take a more hands-on approach. So they can provide the rest of the team, of the design team, with templates and reusable components that will streamline their work. So one thing that can be common, for instance, would be if you're working in Unreal, for instance, a technical designer might be the person in charge to make the blueprints that the other designer, level designers and scripters will just place and then tick or untick a few checkboxes. Another example, on Fable 3, I was in charge of scripting the dialogue for Jasper, the butler who serves you in the Sanctuary, which is the game's 3D menu. The butler would say specific lines when you had a complete outfit in your inventory. This meant I had to write a function to check if an entire outfit was in the inventory. Then I realized it would be really easy to write a function that also checked, are you wearing the outfit? I didn't need it, but I know it would be useful for someone else. So I made that available to the rest of the team, who immediately put it to use in quests that required specific outfits, like the Chicken Chaser quest, where you're given the outfit at the beginning of the quest, but you have to wear it in order to start the activity. So that function then helped the person who scripted that quest to make that check really very easily. Sometimes it's not even the design team that you're helping. On Hidden Agenda, which is the game I worked on after Until Dawn, there was a police station that had some Venetian blinds on the windows. Since their orientation affected the lighting, people started debating what the angle of the slats should be. I suggested that making them variable would allow people to decide later on and then helped an environment artist build the blueprint for it. Another way a technical designer can help is by steering what I call systems abuse. As some of you may relate, we designers are very, very good at building interesting things by using systems in a way they were absolutely not meant to be used. And that's obviously, it's a risk of having a very bug-prone system. A good technical designer should be able to anticipate these use cases and feedback to the engineering team, or at the very least, keep those instances in check. The flip side of this is that it also makes you a very good first port of call before making a new feature request, as you will have the technical creativity to know whether it can't already be done using existing features. Help can also take the form of training other team members, providing hands-on assistance, or debugging. Your knowledge of both the design and the tools make you very good at troubleshooting content bugs. At this point, I hope you now have a better understanding of what a technical designer is and what he can do. So the question is, how do I become one? The single most important thing, or the single most important skill you need is learning how to learn. You need to adapt to new tech, pipelines, and features, because even within the same company, a game might be built in a completely different way from one game to the other. As an example, when I was hired at Supermassive Games, the company has just started working Until Dawn, and for reasons, they were given another studio's proprietary engine. This meant that nobody knew how anything worked, and the documentation was very sparse. We had to learn from scratch. My job was to make sense of the various tools involved in the level creation pipeline, and then explain that to the rest of the design team, using those, and teach them how to use those tools. For instance, the level editor was Maya with a plugin. I had never opened Maya before I started working there. I had to learn, like everything else. And on the next project, most of that knowledge actually became obsolete because we moved to a different tech stack. But that's okay. What you can do is you can practice this learning how to learn skill by training yourself in tools that you wouldn't normally use. And especially if you're on an active project, you can see if you can apply these skills to help the team. Another example, by the end of Until Dawn, I had learned just enough about Motion Builder so that I could do light cutscene edits, even though that wasn't really the job I had to do, but I got to do that anyway. Another really important skill is being able to take in what people want and from that figuring out what they need and communicate that to other departments. I don't know if you've been to yesterday's talk by Richard Carrillo from Ubisoft, where he touched on this, where he's explaining that people have a tendency to flag issues by suggesting a solution. So one of your jobs as a technical designer is to take that feedback and figure out what the actual problem is. And after that, you want to figure out whether the solution that's been proposed is the right solution for the job. For team leads, directors, and producers, there are a few things you can do to empower your technical designers. The first thing is you have to acknowledge that they can be much more than autonomous gameplay programmers. You want to use them to ensure that the design team, and especially the people on the shop floor, like the level designers, the scripters, mission scripters, have a representative in discussions that will shape the way they will do their job. And you want to be aware that while technical designers are your best bet when you need something implemented yesterday, they are in most cases much more useful away from the front lines. Thank you. All right, so we've got 7 minutes for questions. The mic is at the back. Hello.
Hello, my name's Josh. I'm a student at SCAD. My minor is technical direction, but I like both the art aspect and the actual technical programming side of it. But I'm afraid to market myself as a technical director because I don't want to be pushed away from the art. Is it okay that I should I market myself as a TD?
I mean, so there's not a lot of art involved in being a TD, but I don't think that's so. What is it that you're most interested in?
Most interested in materials and shaders.
Okay. To me, that sounds more like a technical artist. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi. I'm a computer science student, and I'm curious about how, because I do more design work on the side than programming work, and I'm curious how extensive my programming knowledge needs to be a technical designer. Yeah.
Not very. No, as I said, you don't need to be a very good programmer. If you can write blueprints that do things, or if you can create a few components in Unity, that's about all you need. The more you do, the better, or the more you know, the better you can help your team. So if you need to get to a point where you need to refactor a bunch of systems, like if you have a stronger programming background, you'll be better at doing that. But if not, then that's fine. There are other people who can do. So you don't need to be, I mean, I said the whole point of this talk was that you don't need to have any programming skills at all, even though they do help.
Thank you.
I'm going to flip this around a bit. I'm a student at Northeastern University, and I am primarily a programmer. You mentioned that technical designers are primarily designers. What would you recommend for someone of my background who is primarily a programmer as far as next steps go in becoming a technical designer?
I would recommend trying to prototype a few game mechanics. So if you do game jams, for instance, are a good tool to do that. because if you've got all the technical skill, all the technical knowledge to already make something, then you just need to train your kind of design muscles. And yeah, the game jam, making games or making prototypes is the best way to do that.
Hello, I'm Cassandra.
Hello.
I'm doing my master's in technical game design at the Academy of Art University. So I've never worked in the industry before. So how should my portfolio look like?
Ooh, portfolio questions. I think I don't really have a portfolio, to be honest. I kind of built one, but I don't think it was never really useful. But yeah, I think it's the same thing. If you can build small prototypes, or being able to show that you've created some system, because it's not so much about being able to build things, but it's more about the reasoning of how you build those things, if that makes sense. So yeah, little prototypes. It doesn't have to be full games, but if you just say, I've designed or I've made a vaulting system, or a cover system, or just being able to, I don't know, so like, or a dialogue system. Kind of these little things. They don't have to be complete, but they look that you can actually you can think an entire system through is a good idea.
Thank you.
As someone who is constantly shifting from task to task, did you ever run into any specific kinds of problems that you would have preferred to focus exclusively on, but had to give that up so that you could be more versatile? Like generalizing versus specializing?
So the question, if I understand correctly, is whether I was okay with generalizing rather than choosing to specialize. Is that correct?
Yes.
No, I think I'd like so. I think for me, probably game technical designers tend to have like kind of T-shaped skills. So they knew a lot of everything, and they knew a bit of everything, and then a lot about one thing. So I think it's for me it was interesting because I wanted to kind of see all the bits of being able to make a game. So it didn't bother me to not have to specialize. I know that, for instance, I wanted to be, when I started, I wanted to be a level designer, and I ended up in a slightly different path. But at the end of the day, I was making them, and I was making games, and I was doing something useful. So I don't regret it.
Hi,
Hello.
thank you for the talk. You say that the technical designer is a champion for the design team, but often what happens in my experience is that you are also, I won't say babysitting them, but making sure that they are not taking a rash decision that cannot be achieved by the other team. So explaining them why this animation cannot possibly made in such time, or that this is not possible by the tech. Do you think this is a role that the technical game designer should avoid doing, or?
Okay, so the question is that in some cases it feels like being a technical designer means babysitting designers. I'm not sure I agree with that, and I think that if that's the case, is that the designers haven't been trained properly, I believe.
So then that would be the role of the technical designer to train them in this instance.
Yeah, so yeah, it is I believe it is the technical designer's responsibility to make sure that the other designers know how to do what they need to do, and that whenever they want to do something else, they probably should either check with the technical designers how to do it, or just have them as a kind of sanity check to review their implementation.
Okay, so highlighting the constraints and advising mostly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're out of time.
I think we're out of time. I can hang out I think there's nobody behind after us, so I can hang around if anybody has any more questions. And thank you for coming.